Welcome to the iStart Insider podcast, where we dive into the entrepreneurial journeys of young innovators, startup founders, and industry experts. I'm Ela Adhikari, and I'm going to be your podcast host for today. In this episode, we're excited to welcome Eashan Sinha, who is part of the engineering team at Cognition, who are the creators of Windsurf and Devin. Good afternoon, Eashan. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
Doing great. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
So, just now to begin, our first question, can you start by sharing a bit about your journey? What first sparked your interest in the technology and AI?
For sure. Yeah. So when I started college back in 2020 at Georgia Tech, I wasn't actually that interested in tech. I wanted to go into business. I wanted to be in consulting or finance. But I took my first CS class at Georgia Tech. It was the intro level CS class. And it was the first time I was exposed to computer science and computer science principles and the way of thinking like a computer scientist, right? And that was a level of thinking and a way of approaching problems that I hadn't been exposed to before. And that was something that was extremely interesting to me, something that till that point in my life, I hadn't had the ability to express myself in that way, right? Solving problems with a coding language. And so that's when I realized that I wanted to pursue CS instead of business. I completely switched up everything and went full send into computer science, dabbled my feet in web development, mobile development, and then later on, a little bit into the ML AI space. Then when ChatGPT launched, that was a really big defining moment for myself as well as my career. And that I was so fascinated by how the technology worked and how capable it was that I started to get more and more curious about what was the underlying technology that was powering it. And that curiosity is what drove me into what I'm doing today, which is essentially working on agentic coding and pushing the frontier of that space. But it was a long journey to get to that point, right? There was so much that goes into the development of a large language model that I was just so curious about when ChatGPT launched. I really wanted to know, why did it feel so magical? And then after I looked into it, I realized that it really wasn't just magic, right? It was math at the end of the day and all these different computations happening under the hood. After that, that is what led me to believe that there's just so much more progress that needs to be made. And then now in 2025, this is honestly the first year where agents have started to take off. And that's just a TLDR of my journey, right? Going from business to computer science. It feels like in my life and in my career, everything is tech. And now it's just differentiating between the AI space and tech. And then within AI, there's different parts of it as well. Yeah, it's just a little bit about my journey and how did I get to where I'm at today.
Yeah, I agree. Once you step foot into this world of artificial intelligence, you get sucked in and it's hard to get out of it. So, on to our
Sure.
second question. When did you first realize you wanted to work in this field professionally? Would you say that was when you were in Georgia Tech when you had this switch from business to the computer science world, or was that the game changing moment for you?
Yeah, I would say that when I realized I wanted to work in this field, it wasn't necessarily when I switched to computer science. It was when I started doing my internships in college and when I started getting exposure to what it was like working at a tech company. My first internship was at a company called NCR. They are a POS payment processing company. They do a lot more as well. That internship was extremely fun. It is technically a tech company. Then after that, it was IBM. Then it was TikTok. And all three internships were actually four internships. I did two at TikTok. They were so different. And each exposed me to different areas of the tech development process, right? And in each company, I was operating at some extent as a software engineer. My last internship was as a PM at TikTok. But each internship exposed me in a different way to developing software. And as I got more and more exposure, I realized that this was the field that I wanted to pursue. And this is where I wanted to work in and what pushed me full time to also join this field.
All right, so now you're working at Cognition Labs. Can you tell us a bit about what the company does and what your role involves at that company?
Of course, yeah. So Cognition is an applied AI lab that is focused on building the frontier and building the future of software engineering. And what this future looks like is a future where software is powered by AI, powered by agents, and where it spans different parts of the autonomy spectrum where humans are involved and then also where humans are a little bit less involved. And so Cognition has two main products right now. They have Windsurf and Devin. Windsurf is an IDE, an interactive development environment where developers, software engineers can actually work with the agent hand in hand. This agent, by the way, is think of like ChatGPT, and you give it a prompt, and it actually is going to accomplish a task for you rather than just give you a response. And that's what Windsurf is, right? It's situated in your development environment. Devin is more so like an autonomous engineer that you would delegate a task to, right? So think of it as like a programmer that was sitting next to you and you just give them a task while you go work on something else. Windsurf is more of a pair programmer, a peer programmer, where you are working hand in hand with an engineer that is taking control of your laptop. And so essentially, Cognition is focused on building the future of the space, and my role at the company is as a deployed engineer. And so we are situated in the middle of honestly everything, right? In the middle of the go to market strategy and efforts, right? Selling the product, as well as in the middle of the product team, right? And servicing a lot of the things to the engineering teams as well as the research team. And a lot of things come through us before getting to the engineering team, and a lot of things from the engineering team go through us before going to sales. And so we're like the on front lines of the engineering org. And we're actually going hand in hand, talking to customers, enabling them, deploying our product in their environments. And our role, a lot more hands on with the customer, but also we are working pretty tightly with the engineering team as well.
Okay, so you're really involved in this company. It seems like that's really cool, especially at such a
Um,
young age. What's something that surprised you about stepping into the tech industry full time?
Yeah, for sure. So one thing that surprised me was just how different every tech company operates, right? You think of big tech like Google, Meta, Amazon, Microsoft, and they operate so differently than what a company like Cognition. We're still a startup, even though we are post Series C and we are approaching 200 employees. We're relatively large compared to what people may think of when they think of a startup. But then we're also way different than what a startup of 10 people would look like, right? And then we're also different than what maybe a startup like OpenAI, that's a few thousand members, would look like, right? And then there's obviously differences between what how OpenAI's run and how Google's run and Meta's run. And what's really interesting to me is just how different companies approach solving problems differently, how they approach process differently. And what's also extremely interesting is I worked at a few big tech companies, right? And you would assume that big tech, a lot of companies would have the same level of process. Um, they'd have the same, kind of standards and guidelines, around ideating on features and then all the way to delivering and deploying that product to selling it. But actually, even those big tech companies have extremely different strategies on how they do things. And that was something that was extremely interesting to me because I didn't realize that the way a company developed product was so core to the founding principles and their and essentially like the company vision, right? For example, Meta is really different than Google in that they don't actually, a lot of times developers, even new developers, will ship directly to prod. They'll do A/B testing live in prod, whereas Google, there's a lot more internal and testing prior to releasing a feature, right? The big surprise to me was just how differently tech companies operate, no matter how similar their product areas are, how similar their features are, or even their size as a company.
Yeah, I guess that a lot goes into that process of just creating the startup and figuring out what protocols and what standards are best for the company, no matter what the end goal is. So, how do you
Sure.
approach learning and staying adaptable in this field because it evolves so quickly?
For sure, yeah. So the the way I learn best is, first of all, just doing as much as you can in your job, right? Not just doing what is expected out of you, but take going above and beyond and doing extra research, right? Getting involved in other initiatives that the company is focusing on, right? And also being involved in discussions around the company where you are learning about what people are doing, about what experiments people are running. And on top of that, also being involved in the space. So if I let's say I wasn't at Cognition and I was at a company like TikTok, I would be very invested in what was happening in the social media space, in the short form video social media space, right? So that I would had a good awareness of what products were out there, what other companies were doing. And I'll be constantly learning about a lot of those things, right? And a lot of that would help me with my current job. Another thing is just staying updated with the news, right? If you're talking about generally how to learn and stay updated with this field, reading the news is something that was honestly a life changing type of habit for me, where every morning a couple of times throughout the day. I will check the news. My Twitter feed is actually all just AI and about this coding agent space. And so I'm just constantly reading up on that. And that is how I stay updated. And then in terms of learning new concepts, I try to, even if something doesn't seem immediately interesting, I try to force myself to learn at least one thing every few days or every week. I want to be able to look back at the previous week and be like, oh, I know something significantly more than I did the previous week about an area, right? And for me, the area that I'm interested in right now is this agentic coding space. And so that is my goal every week is really to improve my knowledge of a certain area in the space or understand how a certain concept, how a certain technology, maybe a research paper, how those things work. And by doing so gradually, I will learn more and more. My curiosity will expand and I will have more things to be curious about. And that will drive more and more learning for me over time.
Yeah, I think that really makes sense. It's good to stay updated because you can't compare AI in 2023 to AI in 2025 because it's just progressed so rapidly since then.
It really has.
So, what's been one of the most rewarding projects or moments in your career so far? I know this is a big one, but
Yeah, I would say one of the most rewarding moments was when me and my friends we were accepted into Y Combinator back in 2024. That honestly seemed like such a far-fetched dream for me. I never thought I would be able to build a startup, let alone get into probably the number one startup accelerator in the world. And it was a surreal moment for me and my friends because we'd work on projects together. We'd worked at big tech companies. Some of them worked at Google, Apple, Nvidia, and some of the other top companies, but we never expected ourselves to be able to build something together and also get into such a high caliber accelerator like Y Combinator. And that has, by the way, for those who haven't heard, Y Combinator is that the accelerator that has, funded companies like Airbnb and Scale AI and a ton of others, right? And DoorDash is another, Instacart's another, and a lot of the other tech companies that are coming out of Y Combinator, they end up being pretty successful. So that was a huge deal for us. And it was really rewarding for me because it was the first time where I felt that I was doing something that was like out of the ordinary for just a kid from Sandy Springs, Atlanta, Georgia. Right. And even though we didn't end up going forward and joining the batch in fall of 24, just that moment of getting in was just like a milestone moment for me where all that hard work that we had done over the summer and before that, and the things we'd built, the things we'd researched and experimented with, it was like someone noticed that and Y Combinator noticed that and they believed in us. And that was just a surreal moment for me and my friends.
yeah, that's really impressive. I think, again, even if you said you didn't end up going further in fall of 2024, just getting accepted must have been such a very big ego boost in a way, or more so just you knew that this is a really important and vital moment of your career.
For
And so
sure.
from your perspective, what's most exciting about where AI is headed right now?
Yeah. So what's most exciting about it is not just the productivity gains that are very apparently obvious, right? And for me, I'm mainly invested in the coding space where AI is really accelerating how software is able to be built and the productivity that software engineers are experiencing, the productivity boost. I think what is most exciting to me is how much AI is going to be able to help us learn and how much it's going to help us be able to get better at things, right? Not just at coding or not just at school and helping us get our assignments done, but helping us learn how certain things work and teaching it to us in a way that we can honestly customize, right? We can always tell a product like ChatGPT or Claude to teach us a certain concept in a certain way that makes it understandable for us. That a few years ago seemed like something that would have been impossible, right? If you were to tell someone back in 2020 that you could learn anything in whatever way you wanted to learn it, and you had unlimited access to something like this essentially, that would have seemed like magic, right? And so I think people don't realize like how fast AI has progressed in the last 2 years. And on top of that, I don't think that people have really seen how much it can help in learning things, right? My main source of learning is through a product like ChatGPT or Windsurf for Devin, where I'm just asking questions about certain concepts, asking questions about my code base, asking questions about how to get a certain task done, explaining something that's really complex to me and breaking it down to its very core components. That's something that you would need to pull aside a teacher. You would need to maybe watch a few YouTube videos. And even then, it's not going to be tailored to you, right? Or maybe you need to pull aside someone else who's an expert in this area. Now you can just converse with AI and learn essentially anything that you want to learn, which is just an extremely powerful tool that I'm hoping, AI is primarily used for in the future. And that's honestly just extremely exciting for me that education in general will be augmented by AI. And education doesn't just mean school, it means just the process of a human being, the process of a person educating themselves.
Yeah, I really do agree in the sense that I'm a high school senior still, and I think a lot of the time, if I'm having trouble with a math problem, I can go to ChatGPT and it won't get tired of me asking questions over and over again or asking it to re-explain or explain differently versus in a classroom setting you don't have that easy access. So I think it's really good how it's progressed so quickly in the past couple of years.
For sure. Yeah.
And then what advice would you give to someone who wants to break into the AI or tech industry but doesn't know where to start?
Yeah. So there's a lot of different ways you can do this. The There's a few ways that I think will help you optimize for breaking into the industry more than others. I think it depends on what you want, right? Some students or some individuals may prefer to break into the research space. And that in that manner, you should be getting involved in research as a high school student, right? Reaching out to professors if you can. As a college student, for sure, literally freshman year, get started on trying to get involved in some form of research. I can't emphasize how important it is to be a good problem solver, right? As much as I really didn't like math back in high school and even in the beginning of college, I realized that skill, the ability to problem solve and take a problem and get to a solution and come up with an algorithm. Again, math at the end of the day is still algorithms, right? You're taking a problem and you're finding a step by step to get to it. That thinking process is extremely important. And so if you get good at something like that, right? You don't need to be an expert in calculus, but just start getting good at thinking with algorithms, right? Trying to think in a problem solving manner and get creative about solving certain problems. I think that is one way where you will start to realize what you're interested in and how to apply this problem solving skill and capability to different areas. So research again is one. And then another is get started on maybe building things as well. Right. So now with tools like Windsurf, with tools like Devin, you can start, and even with the help of ChatGPT, you can start literally building anything you want, right? Build a product. I know, Ella, you have built your own products too before with these tools. And now anybody has the power to do it, right? With natural language, you can essentially go from 0 to 1 in a few hours, and you can constantly iterate on that. And in a few days, you can have a fully working product that your friends, your family can all use. And so I would recommend getting used to building things, getting used to, let's say you wanted a tool to help you keep track of something, right? Get used to starting, build something for that, right? And you don't need to be an expert in coding, right? Get used to that process of having product intuition and having taste and having that creative mindset of wanting something for yourself, wanting a tool to exist for yourself, and then ideating on that, iterating on that, and then the process of actually building and deploying it. Right. I think that's a really useful skill that you'll also just find that extremely interesting once you have something that is done. Start talking to people in the space. It doesn't hurt to reach out to people on LinkedIn or through connections with your parents or through other members of your family or friends, and just talk to people, learn more about what they do, and try to gauge what was their journey like getting to their current position, right? Like how did they go from school to whatever roles they started off with to what role they currently are now. That will give you a sense of what it may take, as well as like what things you may want to incorporate in your life as well to get to that same point or to whatever point you want to get to, right? So talking to people extremely is extremely useful in that aspect, and also in terms of building connections, right? Building connections is extremely important as well, and something that if I were to tell my college or high school self a bit of advice, it would be to focus a lot more on building really meaningful and strong connections, not for the just for the purpose of having someone that can do something for you, but just to make a genuine friend. Or you never know when you could help someone, when someone could help you, and when your friendship with someone could really benefit your life and be something that changes your life as well. So those types of things are also really helpful and breaking into the space. Again, like TLDR, you're trying to figure out what area you want to get into, exposing yourself, whether that's research, whether that's software development, engineering, whatever it is, and then getting into the habit of problem solving, like getting good at math, that those types of skills, and then also like building connections and talking to people in the space.
Yeah, definitely. As someone who's just done the research and the building aspects, I feel like it really is good to just throw yourself into whatever field you want to do, whatever ways or means you have of doing that, whether that be just using ChatGPT to look up how to build something or going and shadowing someone. I think it's really good to just immerse yourself in that experience. And then on to our final question. What's one piece of advice or a mindset you hope listeners take away from your story?
Yeah, of course. One piece of advice that I hope people will take is that it's really important to care about what you're doing. I would say that since I joined Cognition or Windsurf back in the day, it was I've never had more fun in my job. Work doesn't feel like work, honestly. I genuinely feel that work does not feel like work because even on the side, I'm still using Windsurf outside of work. I'm still using Cognition, right? I'm still researching, I'm still understanding things about the space. And it's not because, again, I just want to do good at my job. It's because I'm genuinely interested in what I'm doing. And that obviously carries over to your success at your job. That carries over to even things like how much your promotions and things like that, and obviously those are all side things. Your goal shouldn't be, or at least for me, I would tell myself not to strive for a certain result, but to just strive for doing something that I enjoy. And when I was like trying to choose between jobs, what it came down to was joining a company, joining a team that I feel like I would be excited and passionate to work for. And that is why I joined Windsurf and why I joined Cognition, because the team was all extremely energetic, but also the product was something I'd use every day, anyways. Right. And now I get to work on that product. I get to help sell that product. I get to help build it and work with a team that has been building and shipping it for the last few years, right? I would say that is one of the things that I like the most about what I'm doing. And if I were to tell my older self something, just try to do things that you're genuinely interested in, and you'll see the success and all those other things that will all follow, right?
Yeah, that's really inspiring to hear. I think it's great that you're able to do something you've wanted to do for a while, but at the same time really enjoy it. And it feels like you've gotten that immersive experience that everybody looks for in this AI world now. So that's the last question that we have for you today. Thank you so much. And a big thank you from the iStart Valley YEC, and a big thank you from me as well. And to all of our listeners, I hope you enjoyed this episode and you join us for the next. Thank you.